I've always known I was different from my sister Sarah. While she was the life of every party, I preferred the quiet company of my computer. My name is Ruby, and I've never quite fit into my family's idea of what a normal daughter should be. Growing up, Sarah made sure to remind me just how weird I was. "Ruby, you're such a freak," she'd say, tossing her perfectly styled hair. "All my friends think you're absolutely crazy, sitting in your room programming all day." I'd just shrug and continue typing. The rhythmic clicking of my keyboard was more comforting than any conversation with Sarah's judgmental friends could ever be. While she was busy planning her next social event, I was learning Python, Java, and C++. My parents never really understood my passion for programming, but they couldn't argue with my grades. "Ruby, honey," my mom would say, her voice tinged with concern, "wouldn't you like to go out with some friends instead of staring at that screen all day?" But I had my own dreams, and they didn't involve following Sarah's path of endless socializing. When I got accepted to college with a full scholarship in computer science, even Sarah couldn't make a snide remark about that. "Well, actually, she did. At least you won't have to worry about boys distracting you there." After graduating, I landed a job at a top mobile app development company. The salary was incredible, much more than I let on to my family. I knew exactly what would happen if they found out. Sarah would be at my door with her hand out, and my parents would guilt-trip me if I refused to help. So I kept quiet, lived in a modest rented apartment, and saved every penny I could. My dream was simple: a country house where I could work remotely, away from the chaos of the city and nosy neighbors. A place where I could finally find peace. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of a phone call from Sarah. "Ruby," she said, her voice dripping with fake enthusiasm, "I'm getting engaged. And yes, before you ask, you're invited too." I knew Jake, her fiancé, and he was actually a decent guy. How he ended up with Sarah was beyond me, but I genuinely wished them well. However, I could tell from her tone that she would have been happier not inviting me at all. "The engagement party is at Loup Blanc next month," she continued, her voice taking on that familiar condescending tone. "And please, for the love of God, dress like a normal person. No t-shirts, no jeans, and please do something with your hair. You do know what makeup is, right?" I rolled my eyes, grateful she couldn't see me through the phone. "Yes, Sarah, I know what makeup is. I'll dress appropriately." The weekend after Sarah's call, I visited my parents' house. Big mistake. The moment I walked in, I was hit with a wave of wedding fever. Mom was surrounded by bridal magazines, and Dad was looking overwhelmed by the stack of catering pamphlets in front of him. "Oh, Ruby," Mom said, barely looking up from her magazine, "did Sarah tell you about the engagement?" "Yeah, she did." I sat down at the kitchen table, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "So, how much is all this going to cost?" Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, we're thinking about taking out a loan." I nearly choked on my apple. "A loan? For a wedding? Why not use that money for something practical, like a down payment on their first house?" Mom looked at me like I'd just suggested they should host the wedding in a dumpster. "Ruby, honey, you just don't understand these things. You spend all your time with computers, you don't even have a boyfriend. Every girl dreams of her perfect wedding day." "Every girl except me, apparently," I muttered. "That's exactly what I mean." Mom threw her hands up in exasperation. "You don't understand women's affairs at all. When was the last time you even went on a date?" I bit back a sharp reply. There was no point in telling them about the guys I dated who couldn't handle the fact that I made more money than them, or about the ones who expected me to give up my career once things got serious. Instead, I said, "I just think going into debt for one day is excessive." "Well, nobody asked for your opinion," Sarah's voice came from behind me. I hadn't even heard her come in. "Some of us actually care about making memories and having nice things." I turned to face her. "And some of us care about financial responsibility." "God, you're such a bore," Sarah rolled her eyes. "This is why you're still single, you know. Everything has to be practical with you. Where's the romance? The spontaneity? Probably in the same place as your common sense, I muttered under my breath. Mom shot me a warning look. Ruby, if you're just going to be negative, maybe you should go home. I stood up, suddenly tired of all of it. Maybe I should, good luck with the loan applications. As I walked to my car, I could hear them resume their excited wedding planning through the open window. I wondered if they'd even notice if I didn't show up to the engagement party. But I knew I had to go, if only to prove that I could be normal when I wanted to be. The month flew by faster than I expected. On the day of Sarah's engagement party, I actually made an effort. I bought a navy blue dress that cost more than I'd normally spend on clothes for an entire season. I even went to a salon and let them work their magic on my usually messy hair. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The taxi dropped me off at Le Blanc, one of the most expensive restaurants in town. Sarah had rented out the entire place for her engagement party, something that made my practical mind cringe at the unnecessary expense. The venue was decorated with what must have been thousands of dollars worth of flowers, and champagne was flowing freely. As I walked in, I noticed how the guests were already divided into their little cliques. Sarah's friends from college were huddled near the bar, giggling and taking selfies. The groom's family occupied several tables near the front, all looking properly impressed by the extravagant display. My parents were working the room, Mom in her element as she introduced people to each other. I looked around for my place card, assuming I'd be seated at the family table near Sarah. After all, I was the bride's only sister. I checked each table near the front, then the middle section, finding nothing with my name. Finally, I approached my parents. Mom, where am I supposed to sit? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Mom looked me up and down, her expression a mix of surprise and something else. Was that disappointment? Even in my expensive dress and professionally done hair, I apparently still didn't meet her standards. Oh, she said, glancing around nervously, your table is over there. She pointed to the furthest corner of the room, partially hidden in shadows, where the expensive lighting didn't quite reach. I walked over to the indicated table, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Sure enough, there was a single place card with my name on it. One chair, one place setting, at a table meant for 6. I stood there staring at it, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. What the hell, Sarah? I muttered, turning on my heel to find my sister. I found her surrounded by her bridesmaids, all of them cooing over her engagement ring. Sarah, can we talk privately? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes, but followed me to a quiet corner. What is it? And please don't make a scene. A scene? You put me at a table by myself in the corner, like some kind of pariah, and you're worried about me making a scene? Oh, get over yourself, Sarah snapped. What did you expect? You're a total loser, Ruby. All my friends think you're weird, and Jake's family doesn't need to be subjected to your peculiarities. I felt like I'd been slapped. Your friends think I'm weird? Because I have a successful career instead of living off our parents? Because I don't post every detail of my life on social media? No, because you're a freak who cares more about computers than people. Sarah's voice was rising, attracting attention from nearby guests. Before I could respond, Mom appeared at Sarah's side. What's going on here? Mom, Sarah just called me a loser and a freak, I said, hating how my voice cracked. Mom's face hardened. Ruby, stop making a scene, this is your sister's special day. Just go sit at your table and try not to draw attention to yourself. I looked between them, these two women who were supposed to be my family, and felt something inside me break. Without another word, I turned and walked to my isolated table in the corner. I sat at that lonely table for exactly 30 minutes. I watched as Sarah and Jake made their official engagement announcement. I watched as my parents beamed with pride. I watched as everyone else in the room celebrated, laughed, and enjoyed themselves while I sat alone in the shadows. Finally, I'd had enough. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and quietly made my way to the exit. Nobody noticed me leaving, or if they did, they didn't care enough to stop me. The taxi ride home was a blur. I kicked off my expensive heels the moment I got through my apartment door and changed into my comfortable programming clothes. Yes, the t-shirt and jeans Sarah so despised. Then I did what I always did when I needed to process emotions. I started coding. Hours turned into days, days into weeks. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects and earning substantial bonuses. My bank account grew while my contact with my family shrank to nothing. No calls, no texts, no visits. It was like I'd been erased from their lives, and honestly, it felt like a relief. That's when I decided to stop waiting and start living. I had more than enough saved for a down payment on a house, and my salary could easily cover a mortgage. I contacted a realtor named Lisa and told her exactly what I was looking for. Single-family home, preferably somewhat isolated, good internet connection for remote work, and absolutely no nosy neighbors. I listed my requirements. Lisa laughed. "I think I know just the place." She was right. The house was perfect, a modern country home with a wraparound porch, surrounded by enough land to ensure privacy. The previous owners had already set up high-speed internet, and the home office had massive windows overlooking a small pond. "I'll take it," I said the moment we finished the tour. The mortgage process was smooth, and within weeks, I was a homeowner. I told exactly 2 people about my purchase, my best friend from college and my team lead at work. My family didn't need to know, they'd lost that privilege when they'd relegated me to the shadows at Sarah's engagement party. I moved in gradually, setting up my home office first, then furnishing the rest of the house room by room. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. No drama, no judgment, just me and my space. But peace, as I was learning, was a luxury my family wouldn't let me enjoy for long. 2 weeks after I'd settled into my new home, my phone lit up with my mother's number. "Ruby, we need to talk," she said, her voice stern. "Come to the house tomorrow afternoon. Your sister will be there too." I should have known something was wrong from her tone. I should have asked why they suddenly wanted to see me after weeks of silence. But I didn't. Instead, I agreed to come, walking straight into the ambush they had planned. I pulled into my parents' driveway, noticing Sarah's flashy red convertible already parked there. The car had been a gift from our parents for her college graduation, just one of the many ways they'd always shown their favoritism. I parked my sensible hybrid behind it and took a deep breath before heading inside. The moment I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. My parents and Sarah were sitting in the living room, looking like a panel of judges ready to pass sentence. Their faces were stern, accusing, and Sarah had that smug look she always wore when she thought she had something over me. "Sit down, Ruby," Dad said, pointing to the lone chair facing them all. I sat, my programmer's brain already running through possible scenarios, debugging what could have triggered this family tribunal. "What's this about?" Sarah leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Why don't you tell us about your new house, Miss Successful Programmer?" My blood ran cold. How did they? Then it hit me. "Lisa," I said flatly, "your friend Lisa is my realtor." "Bingo," Sarah clapped sarcastically. Imagine my surprise when she mentioned helping my sister buy a beautiful country house. My sister, who lives in a modest apartment and never seems to have any extra money to help her family. Mom jumped in before I could respond. "We know everything, Ruby, we know how much you make, we know about your bonuses. You've been lying to us all this time." "Lying?" I stood up, anger replacing my initial shock. "I haven't lied about anything. I just chose not to share my financial information with you." "There's a difference." "Same thing," Sarah snapped. "You've been holding out on us, while living like a hermit, to fool everyone into thinking you were struggling." I laughed bitterly. When exactly should I have shared this information? At my corner table during your engagement party? You were ashamed of me when you thought I was a poor loser, and now you're angry because I'm actually successful? Dad raised his hand to quiet us both. "Ruby, The point is, you've never shown any interest in helping your family. We're taking out loans for your sister's wedding while you're buying country houses. Interest in helping? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When have any of you shown interest in my life? You've never once visited my apartment. You've never asked about my work except to dismiss it as sitting at a computer all day. The only time you pay attention to me is when you need something or want to criticize me. They started talking all at once, their voices overlapping. We could have used help with Sarah's college tuition. I needed a new car last year. The wedding venue deposit alone is crushing us. I held up my hand. I'm done making excuses for my success. I'm done feeling guilty for managing my money well. I'm leaving. Wait, Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. We didn't actually call you here to fight about your secret wealth. I turned back, dreading what was coming next. Since you can afford country houses, Sarah said, her voice sickly sweet, you can pay for my wedding. I felt a laugh bubble up from somewhere deep inside me, not a happy laugh, but the kind that comes when something is so absurd you can't help but laugh or cry. Don't you dare laugh at us, Sarah stood up, her face reddening. You owe us. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice deadly calm. Especially not after how you've treated me. How we've treated you, Sarah screeched. You're the one who's been living a lie, hiding your success from your family. I turned to face her fully. You're right, Sarah, I am successful. I'm a loser who can afford to buy her own house. And you know what? Losers don't pay for weddings for their successful sisters. The look of shock on her face was almost worth all the drama, almost. Ruby, Mom gasped. How dare you throw your sister's words back at her? Why not? She meant them when she said them. She meant them when she stuck me in the corner at her engagement party. She meant them every time she called me a freak or weird or crazy. Why shouldn't I mean them now? I walked to the door, ignoring their protests and accusations. Just before leaving, I turned back one last time. You know what's funny? If you had ever shown genuine interest in my life, if you had ever treated me like a real member of this family instead of an embarrassment to be hidden away, I might have actually wanted to help. But you made your choices, and I've made mine. I drove home to my beautiful new house, feeling lighter than I had in years. But the universe wasn't done testing me yet. The very next day, while I was setting up my new home office, I heard aggressive knocking at my front door. Through the security camera I'd installed, I saw Sarah standing there, clutching what looked like papers. I opened the door, but blocked the entrance. What do you want? Here, she thrust a stack of papers at me. This is the list of wedding expenses. The venue deposit is due next week. I looked at the list without taking it. The numbers were astronomical, enough to put a down payment on another house. And you're showing me this because you're paying for it, she said, as if explaining something to a child, all of it. It's what Mom and Dad expect, and it's what I deserve. What you deserve, I couldn't help but laugh again. Sarah, you don't deserve anything from me. Not after how you've treated me our entire lives. She stormed off my porch, screaming that I wasn't invited to her wedding. I called after her, don't worry, I wouldn't come anyway. I already know which table you'd put me at. I thought that would be the end of it, I was wrong. The next few days brought a barrage of calls and messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly concerned about family unity and sisterly duty. Apparently, Mom had been busy spreading the word about my selfishness and hidden wealth. After 3 days of constant harassment from relatives, I'd had enough. Every notification on my phone brought another guilt-tripping message or angry voicemail. Aunt Linda thought I was destroying the family. Cousin Mike, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, suddenly had strong opinions about my obligations. Even my mother's bridge club friends were messaging me on Facebook. I sat in my home office, staring at my multiple monitors, watching the messages pile up. The programmer in me knew that every problem had a solution, you just had to find the right algorithm. In this case, the solution was simple: debug the family narrative. I opened my social media accounts and started typing. Since there seems to be a lot of confusion about recent family events, let me clear things up. At my sister's engagement party, I was seated alone at a table in the darkest corner of the restaurant, separated from all other guests. When I asked why, my sister called me a poor loser and said she was ashamed of me. My own mother told me to sit there quietly and not make a scene. Now, weeks later, they've discovered I'm successful in my career. Suddenly, the sister who was ashamed to seat me with her guests demands that I pay for her entire wedding. The parents who never once visited my apartment now feel entitled to know everything about my finances. To all the relatives messaging me about family duty, where was this concern for family unity when I was being hidden away at family functions? Where were these messages of support when I was being called a freak for pursuing my career? I bought my house with money I earned through hard work. I'm not obligated to fund anyone else's life choices. End of story. I hit post and sat back, waiting for the fallout. It came faster than I expected, but not in the way I anticipated. The relatives went quiet, the angry messages stopped. Instead, I started getting private messages from cousins sharing their own stories about Sarah's behavior over the years. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she'd treated poorly. My phone rang, it was my mother. I declined the call. It rang again, Sarah. Declined. My dad tried next. Declined. They kept trying, switching between their phones, even trying to call from unknown numbers. I blocked them all. Then came the pounding on my door. I checked my security camera, my parents and Sarah were standing on my porch. Sarah was screaming something about how I'd ruined her reputation. Mom was crying. Dad looked uncomfortable. I turned on the porch speaker, another tech addition I'd installed. Go home. I have nothing to say to any of you. Ruby, please, Mom's voice crackled through my security system. We can talk about this. Now you want to talk, I responded through the speaker. After years of dismissing me? After trying to shame me into paying for Sarah's wedding? No thanks. You're destroying this family, Sarah screamed at my security camera. I couldn't help but laugh. No, Sarah, you and Mom and Dad did that years ago. I'm just finally standing up for myself. They stayed on my porch for another hour, alternating between threats and pleas. I kept working, letting my noise-canceling headphones block out their voices. Finally, they left, but not before Sarah screamed that I was definitely not invited to her wedding. Like that was supposed to be a punishment. Life has a way of moving forward, whether you're ready or not. I heard through my aunt that my parents ended up taking out a massive loan for Sarah's wedding. Mom had to give up her weekly spa treatments, and Dad had to postpone his retirement. But they still tell everyone who'll listen about their ungrateful eldest daughter who refused to help. Sarah got her dream wedding, or at least, the version of it she could afford with my parents' loan. I saw the photos on social media. It looked exactly like every other wedding Sarah's friends had, expensive, elaborate, and completely devoid of personality. I noticed they seated another cousin at that corner table where I had sat at the engagement party. Apparently, she'd committed the sin of getting divorced the year before, making her another family embarrassment. My aunt keeps me updated on family news, though I never ask for it. She told me that my parents had to downsize their lifestyle significantly to manage the wedding loan payments. Sarah complains constantly about how her modest wedding was all my fault. She conveniently forgets to mention the corner table incident when she tells people her version of events. As for me, I'm thriving. My house has become my sanctuary. I've set up the perfect home office, complete with all the latest tech. My team at work loves that I can host our virtual meetings without background distractions. I've even started mentoring young programmers in my spare time, especially girls who, like me, prefer computers to conformity. Last week, I got another wedding invitation. This time it was from one of the young women I mentor. She's marrying her girlfriend, and her conservative family refused to attend. Will you sit at the family table? She asked me. You're more family to me than they've ever been. I accepted, of course. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you end up with. Sometimes the black sheep of the family isn't the one with the problem. And sometimes, sitting alone at a table in the corner is the first step toward finding your own place in the world. As for my parents and Sarah, I'm sure they'll keep telling anyone who'll listen about their terrible daughter-sister who refused to pay for a wedding. But I've learned that their opinion of me doesn't define me. My worth isn't measured by their acceptance or rejection. I am Ruby, the programmer who bought her own house, built her own life, and finally learned to stop apologizing for not fitting into someone else's idea of who I should be. And I wouldn't have it any other way.